bring on our first guest of the old show today. He is Drew Carter, who you would have seen on your television set last night at the Dome for Cuse and Towson. The Orange winning that game in the first round of the playoffs by the score of 2015. All right, Drew, should we just tell Evan Malloy to steer clear of this? Like, is he going to be good to make it through our conversation today unscathed? You never know when those 2017 highlights are going to pop up again.
I know it's funny, Higgy, and thanks for having me. It's good to see you. It's good to know Syracuse is back. But when we were talking about, the show during this week, I emailed Kristen Hennessy, our producer, who I know you know well, and I said, hey, just a thought, this is a rematch of the 2017 quarterfinal, so maybe we could do a flashback to that. And Ryan Boyle, who I called the game with last night, went to Princeton, super smart guy. And he was like, the easiest suggestion of all time. Of course, we're going to do the 2017 highlight. Of course, we're going to see the Joe Sider goal like 4 or 5 times. And I actually, and RB and I thought this would be funny. I said, instead of actually doing like a real highlight of that game, and you know how it is with those in-game highlight packages, like it's going to be 30 seconds tops. We don't need to show any play aside from the Sider goal. Like, let's just lean into it. Everyone who's really inside lacrosse, pardon the pun, everyone who's really inside lacrosse knows that they're going to see that play. So let's just show it 5 times, or let's just show the same angle that won the scintillating angle from behind the goal, from behind Sider, 5 times. Just lean into it and really make Evan Malloy feel it. Obviously, we showed a couple other plays. Nate Solomon had 4 goals in the second half. I know you called that game, so but I was hoping we would just show the Sider goal over and over again.
Evan was tweeting at the time. So Evan did see it. He was quite aware of what happened, and poor Evan Malloy. I felt bad for him, and this is honestly, Drew, and you saw a great back-and-forth, up-tempo game last night. There's 35 goals. That game was pre-shot clock, and that game, Towson had perfected the art of fake shooting in that game because they were warding off all the stall calls and everything. They were shooting, and we saw from the Sider goal, right? Like, he could shoot it where he felt like it, and oftentimes that was 10 feet wide just so they could get it away. So thank goodness, right, that Lax has changed so much in the last 7 years so we could get a great show like we got for you last night.
You got me?
Nope, did we? Oh, there's Drew. We lost Drew. Do we have Drew back? There's Drew back.
That was, sorry, a little Wi-Fi issue there.
There we go. A magical disappearance. I was just saying, though, thank goodness Lax has changed here with the shot clock since that Towson game, because while that game was exciting for Towson, it was a terrible exhibition of the sport. It was not how Lax was meant to be played. Last night, up and down, run and gun. That's lacrosse. That had to be a blast to watch and call last night. Yeah,
and you bring up the second half. I did make mention of that. Because I'd forgotten about the fact that, the second half was pretty much unbearable to watch. It was stall ball. It was a lot of pump fakes. And look, I think Towson deserved to win that game. They came out and they smoked him in the first quarter. I was a sophomore that year. So I remember I actually did a profile of Sean Nadalin, Towson's head coach, going into that game. And that was 7 years ago. So it was good to see him again. But I made mention of that. So hopefully there were some Syracuse fans watching at home like, yes, finally someone said it. Like, they were playing stall ball and it was unfair and it wasn't lacrosse. You fast forward now and it really looked like a different sport. I mean, for Syracuse to score 20 against that team, super impressive. And what I really like to see is they were not complacent. They didn't settle. Towson proved over the course of the season, but even in the first half against Syracuse, that they can be pretty potent themselves. And so you saw in the second half, they bumped Leo back down to attack, which is something they had done against Virginia when they scored those 18 goals. That seemed to be a pretty good move. Spallina stayed aggressive the entire time, even after Towson sort of changed the way they were covering him. So it looked really cool, and it was very, very fun to watch. Now, it was kind of a boring fourth quarter, but that third quarter was pretty electric.
Yeah, because it got to halftime. Towson scored that late goal in the first half. It's like, oh man, Syracuse going into the locker room down a goal. Been in some of these moments before. There hasn't been an upset yet today. Yeah. These thoughts start running through your mind. I thought that third quarter was as impressive as I've seen in a long time at a Syracuse, right, Drew? Because that was an absolute, don't play around with it. If you play around with it, these guys are going to get you late. Yeah,
it was an avalanche. The moment you knew, I think, was when John Mullen, the freshman, wins a faceoff, goes straight to goal and scores. And that was after RB and I were both bummed about this. Might be a little too inside broadcasting for some people, but we were both pissed about that goal call because the previous one, Michael Leo scored. It looked like they disallowed it. It was actually a dead ball contact foul, which means the goal counts, but there's no face off. So it was really my fault. We took the scoreboard down and we put it back, and no one knew how many goals we had. RB's trying to explain it, and then 5 seconds later, Mullen scores. I just totally rip off Eamon McEnany right down Marshall Street, but it's more of an homage than a rip off, I think, because I think Eamon is probably the best guy I've ever heard do this. So that's the little tip of the cap to him. But it was an amazing moment. The crowd went nuts. The crowd was good. It wasn't huge, but it was good. I'm not sure if John Wildhack was still sitting in his solo blue seat up in the upper deck where he was the one guy. And he was just surrounded by complete emptiness, but he was taking his new seat for a test drive. I'm not sure if he was still up there, but I'm sure he was cheering pretty loud because that was a cool moment.
It's important to test drive the new seats in there, and you can see a lot of them were in the upper deck last night. Drew, I'm going to absolve you of blame for that goal call. The refs could have told you what happened on the previous play. That would have been helpful if they'd explained, because nobody had any idea what was happening after that goal before. There wasn't an explanation, there wasn't anything to point you in the right direction of what had just happened.
Well, Brian, as somebody who's called lacrosse, why would you explain anything when you can keep people guessing? I mean, it's more fun that way. It's just keep it a mystery. Don't explain anything. And to their credit, they did announce, or the PA announcer announced that it was a dead ball contact foul, but that was during action. The game was going on, and somebody announced it, and I was like, what in the world? And then all of a sudden, Syracuse was scoring another goal. But I did see John Wildhack in the TSA pre-check line this morning around 4:30 or 5 a.m. As you would expect on a Monday after graduation, a total cluster at Syracuse Hancock. Just a mess. Miracle that I made my 6 a.m. flight. Horrible planning on my part to book that in the first place. I was on the way to the airport. I'm like, oh my God, I'm screwed. No way. Because I finally put it together that it was going to be a zoo there. But I did see John, and I said hello. Surprised he recognized me, considering how much of a zombie I looked like. But I was like, "Hey, did you see your shot on the broadcast?" He was like, "Oh yeah, I got some texts about that. That was pretty funny." So I'm glad he was a good about it, because if you didn't see it, we took the wide shot where you could see the entire side of the dome, and then we zoomed in very, very slowly until you could finally tell, hey, that's the athletic director with nobody else in the upper deck. It was kind of funny.
Just hanging out by himself in one of the brand new blue seats. And now, there was a ton of them in already, but the install with graduation over that is full speed ahead at this point. We got Drew Carter, ESPN, with us here. And, Drew, you said it before. Cuse is back. And we've been asking, saying it tongue-in-cheek, not tongue-in-cheek all year now. Is Cuse back? Does it have to be the Final Four? What defines that for you? I feel everyone is defining this differently as we go through this season.
To me, what that means, and you're right, it's tongue-in-cheek. It's the same thing as Texas football. To me, Texas football is back. They're perennially a contender to win the national championship, and that's how I define it. And I feel like Syracuse is there. It took Gary 1 year of having players who he didn't recruit and seemed to not fit his system or weren't talented enough, or a little bit of both. They won 4 games. That was a rough year. And then last year was kind of the transition year. And here we are, where Gary is recruiting his tail off, and he's giving the players a lot of freedom, and he's hitting the portal. He's bringing in freshmen. You have a stud. You're good on both sides of the field. You have good specialists. I don't know what else you could ask for to say that they are back, aside from winning a championship. And to me, and maybe I've been around the Boston Celtics enough that this is how I feel now, because this Celtics core has, made it to a finals, made it to a Game 7 of an Eastern Conference Finals. To me, all you can ask for as a fan is a chance just to be in the mix, because ultimately only one team's going to win it all. And so I think Syracuse is in that mix again, and I don't expect them to leave that mix. So yeah, I think Syracuse is back.
Yeah, and if you win this week, you're back in the Final Four, and you can't be more back than that, other than actually winning a national championship. And I don't know how many of the other games you got to take in this weekend, Drew, as you were getting ready for this, but all 8 seeded teams win. You had the stat last night. I saw Niche tweeting about it as well. First time since '04, when by the Orange did win the championship that year. What did you make of this weekend, where it is setting up? My goodness, this upcoming weekend should be as good as it gets here in lacrosse.
Only blue bloods allowed, man. The quarterfinal is the cool kids table of college lacrosse. Nobody else is allowed to sit with us. It's like Denver might be the team with the least amount of history, and they're obviously a tent pole of Western lacrosse and really good this year. And they had probably the best coach of all time coach them to their first national championship. So it's going to be an awesome quarterfinal. It's almost like Ron was a bit of it, especially the game very close. Last year, you had good early, but had an half inning behind by.
Hey, Drew, you're breaking up a little bit. Let's have you sign off and sign back on here a second, just to get the connection reestablished here. But yeah, while we get Drew resituated here, I do want to ask him about the Celtics when we get him back on here in a second. But this weekend, you look at the history of this weekend, there's 8 teams left. Georgetown is the only team that has not won the national championship ever. All 7 other programs remaining have won at least one championship here in the last 17 years. And of the 8 teams remaining in the tournament, it accounts for 18 of the last 21 national champions. As we got Drew Carter back here. I want to switch, get a little Celtics in with you, Drew, before we let you go. For those that don't know, Drew also does television for the Celtics. They've got, what game 4 going tonight in Cleveland. What do you make of this Celtics here right now? Like, it feels like they always toss it a clunker. they did that in game 2. It looks like they bounced back in game 3. What do you make of this team? And do they need a healthy Porzingis back if they're going to be able to legit go win a championship this year?
I'm starting to believe, Brian, that the Celtics are just. They care about the city of Boston so much. They want to give the home fans an extra game in every series because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense how they lost to the Heat in game 2 in the first round. And that was because Miami, pardon the pun, caught fire from deep. Lost to Cleveland in game 2 of the second round. That one was a little bit more concerning, I think, because it looked like the Celtics were messing with the game a little bit, didn't defend as well as we know they're capable of, and Donovan Mitchell was incredible. But I think you got to feel pretty good right now as a Celtics fan that you're going to make the Eastern Conference Finals. If you watch the other series in the East, I mean, those teams, it's like World War I out there. It's a mess. Like, the Knicks have guys dropping like flies. It seems like every game they lose somebody for the season. It's like, when are they going to run out of bodies? They might. Eddie Lampkin might be going to the Knicks for all we know because they could use it.
I think he might be there now. I don't know. I haven't found him. He might be at the Garden.
Tibbs might play him 43 minutes in Game 5, and then the Pacers play no defense, and I think they could be a problem because like Aaron Naismith will injure a few of our players, but I think that the Celtics should be able to make the finals without Porzingis. Now that's the question mark is once you get there. And hopefully by then he'll be ready to go. I actually, I don't have any inside intel on this, Brian, but my sense of the situation is if the Celtics felt like they were like in a back against the wall situation, he might be able to go. That was kind of the initial, timetable. It's a soleus strain, and I'm not going to pretend like I really know what that means, but I think it's one of those situations where you don't mess around with that part of the body because we all know what can happen. We saw Kevin Durant play with a sore calf and end up blowing out his kiss. You want to avoid that. But I think once they make the finals, and I don't want to assume anything, but if they're there and Porzingis comes back, I think you got to feel really good about their chances. Plus, and that's the last thing I'll say, like Denver and Minnesota beating each other up. Seems like OKC and Dallas are going to do the same thing. If the Celtics can roll through the East, they're going to get a chance to have a lot of rest and be ready to go and bring Banner 18 home, Brian. Let's go. I want to be on a duck boat in the summer.
Oh, yeah.
I'm tired of waiting. It's been one whole year. It's been 6 months. I want my duck boat parade.
like you got to get the invite on that, right? Like they're not going to leave you off the invite list for that, are you? I mean, you got to get on the parade, huh?
I hope so, unless someone from Towson is handing out the invites and they watched the broadcast last night and thought I was too slanted towards Syracuse. But our statistician, Rich Ganner, is a Towson alum, so we have one of each in the booth.
All right, that's good in booth balance. That's hard to pull off. And you had a Princeton guy there. You had an Ivy League guy to keep all you guys in check. All right, Drew. Good stuff as always. Enjoy the week. We'll catch you later, I'm sure.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks, fellas.